All right, we're live. Hey, it's Jeremy from Gerimi.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, and I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus videos, bonus content, see artwork in progress before anyone else, you can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. To get the best of my social media posts throughout the month, you can get them all in one place at my newsletter. That is newsletter.jeremy.net. And to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. And that will forward you to my Amazon author page. So today, we're doing something a little different. We got a guest on. I've been doing a few guests. I have my boy Jesse Tobes on a little bit while back. Today, we've got Amar, who has been on as a frequent commentator in the chats, and he always has some cool knowledge to share. Also has his own great YouTube channel, which I'm going to pop up on the screen there. It's youtube.com/touchanddesignart. And so I want to get Amar on here just now that I'm having guests on. Get on here. We can chop it up, talk, say hi to everybody. So,
hello, everyone.
So, yeah. So, Amar, I mean, we're both working on different comic-related projects. And, I know I've been sharing my process here on working on Morningstar for a while now. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your series, just for everyone on the chat who hasn't had a chance to check out your series yet?
Yeah, well, my book I did about a year ago. Well, actually, it feels like 2 years now because in 2018, and I finished the book. It took a lot longer than I want. You see, Iron Rocks is in it.
Oh, hey, Iron Rocks. He's always Johnny on the spot, man. He likes to hit it up.
Yeah, so I did it, and it took like forever to actually have this happen. And I've been procrastinating with it, and I was always like putting it out because I was always comparing myself with other artists and like, well, I want to get to this level. And then the same thing like with my 3D, I want to get to magazine level before I put something out. And it just hindered my progress. So I feel like I've gotten to a stage where it's like I really don't care as much anymore. Not saying I don't care about what I put out, is just caring about what my art should be or be at, and just focus on trying to get the ideas out. Because what happens is with anybody that's creative, you just come up with these ideas and they can fester, and then you come up with new ideas. And if you have like a really vivid imagination, when you dream, you come up with more ideas. And if you write this stuff down, it just becomes like a whole Bible of stuff. So for me, I've generated tons of ideas, and it's just now just trying to find time to get them done. So that's why when I'm in the chat, I usually talk about, well, this is what I want to do. And even though I might not get it done when I want to get it done, I'm trying to, that's why I do the streams as well. I'm trying to put that out into the universe, and then also have some sort of video record or something saying that, well, you said you was going to get this done. And even if you feel like, even if nobody watches this, I always take the notion is you one video away. And then if you go out there and you put this one video out and it goes viral and everybody starts looking at your content, you say, well, this is what I said I was going to do, and you never did it. Like, okay, I gotta have some sort of track record that I can finish stuff, so that way when people start looking at your work and they look at it and they like it, they can say, oh yeah, he's developed some sort of track record. So that's my end goal. And last year I kind of took like a break because I've been working more on animation. And I suppose I actually finished up all my stories, but that didn't happen because I spent quite a bit of time developing videos on the channel. And what I learned that I can do these live streams. They're pretty easy for me to do, but building custom content is more like what people actually like doing or like to see. Mm-hmm. So, I've threw out some ideas to you, and I think what I've discovered, unfortunately, with the internet, is you have to put out things that's going to trigger an emotion. and then also can be entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can do something like that, you would draw more people in, especially engaging. You gotta that's going to engage people. It can be something they can learn from, but if you can create some sort of content that's going to be engaging, where they can comment, whether it may be negative or positive, and then that would generate more people to share it, because other people that think like them is going to share that content, and then um, once it gets out there, if you can build more content like that, you can kind of guide those people over to what you want them to see. And me being a hardhead, I'm always trying to do it or think of doing it my way, but it's like slowly you gotta sort of like conform to what people are gravitate to on the internet, from far as art or far as just entertainment or whatever. So that's what I've been thinking about. So I kind of shared an idea with you last year in regards to this.
You want me to throw your screen back up?
Uh, oh no, you don't have to pull it up yet. But I had thought about some other ideas, and I researched the term ad hominem. That was something that came up from another YouTuber that was talking about how people generate a lot of views. I know this is way off the subject, but it sort of on the subject, because people that start channels really want to be able to figure out like why can I get any views, or why can I get people to see my content? Well, they're not gonna see it because it's like you putting a speck of salt in a big lake.
In an ocean.
Yeah, or ocean, and you're expecting people to see that. Nobody knows who you are. So you got to be able to make some big ripples in this pond that people already been making ripples in. So in order for you to do that, you got to touch people in certain ways, and then also share that content in different ways, not in a way that's sort of like spam it, but share it in a way where it's in the communities that you engage in. So my biggest thing was first get content, because that's what artists tend to lack. They do one or two really good pieces of art, and then they want to figure, well, why am I not?
Why don't I get all the fame and glory when I dropped like 2 or 3 dope pieces? It's like, now you gotta do like 20, 30, 100, 1,000.
Yeah, and then you got to interact with the communities that you want, or you see people that already have communities set up and they already have a lot of engagement. So you got to engage in that community, not just spam that community, and they got to get to know you. And it's a lot of busy work. And as artists, a lot of us don't want to do all that busy work, especially when we want to market. We just want to make sure our art is good. And then when we're done, put it out there, and hopefully it makes a ripple. But it's not gonna happen like that. There's a lot of other. I think it's like something someone told me when you were starting a business. You're going to be doing most of your work is going to be in the marketing versus doing the actual work. So you got to look at it from that standpoint. So you got.
That's true.
Oh.
Yeah. I also see, real quick, I wanted to throw out, I have to give a mad shout out to Alexi in the chat, because he is a brand new subscriber on Patreon. So I was hoping he'd show up, because I didn't want to just say it and not have him hear it. I wanted to be live on the internet so everyone could know. Much love, much props. I appreciate your support. Thank you, Alexi. I appreciate it. So I'm glad you're here to get to the stream. So he's enjoying the having people on, having our live chat, but yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of finding that sweet spot between, I guess, creating what you want to create and creating work that is not necessarily, it's not that it's contrived to reach out to people, but taking the place where what people are looking for, what people are interested, aligns and overlaps with what you're passionate about, right? That sounds like where you're going, right?
Yeah. It's all about like I said, for me, you got to generate the content first, and figure out the message that you're trying to share. And as you're doing that, you got to also be willing to engage with other people that already have built-in audiences, and not in a spammy way, but
Mm-hmm.
go out there and say, okay, well, I'm gonna engage with this audience and have these people get to know me, and that's a lot of extra time that a lot of people really don't want to spend, but that's part of the whole game here. You gotta put in that lead work because nobody knows who you are, and then like I said, it's for me. I always look at it as you're one video away,
Mm-hmm.
and that one video can change everything. So it's just finding out what that is that people want to see. And for me, it just from my analyzation and just looking at so much content on YouTube and the internet, period, you gotta not just look at what's trending, but look
Mm-hmm.
at what's going to trigger people. And I'm not saying just to do content to trigger people, but you can do it in a creative way, like they do with all marketing, and as it relates to art, and try to create content and figure out what people like. Because the thing is, for me, I don't feel like I should conform to doing what everybody else is doing just because it's trending, and that's what they do, because I feel like I'm gonna get caught up in that, and I'm never going to be able to do what I want to do. And plus, I feel like I don't have the time to do that. So I feel like I got to figure out how can I offer something to someone that they will like, but then also trigger that engagement, and then also lead them to see the things that I'm doing and say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is how I feel about this, and this is what I have to say about this, but also look at this as well. So
Mm-hmm. Do you ever listen to the or watch the YouTube channel One Fantastic Week?
no, I haven't heard of that one.
I would very definitely check them out because they talk in like their entire series is in depth about a lot of what you're talking about, in the sense that for starters, it's these two guys, Sam and Pete, and they're fantasy artists. They do a lot of like concept art stuff. They started out doing stuff like either the type of stuff that you would have for Dungeons and Dragons and RPG games, or Magic the Gathering, that type of artwork, or maybe some small work for video game clients, and then selling their own work at a lot of comic book conventions. And while being on the convention circuit, they just slowly built up their audience, and they were like, hey, we can do better taking our work directly to our own audience instead of trying to work for like the scraps where these other companies are making a lot of money off of IP, but they're not necessarily paying those kind of like, they're not paying the rates that you would think you would, no one's getting rich doing Magic the Gathering cards. But a lot of what they really talk about really is not making art to the market, but finding your own voice, finding what really matters to you that you're passionate about, and then finding the same people that are passionate about what you're making. So it's that thing where you're saying you don't have time to chase the trends, and they're saying, yeah, don't chase the trends. Make the things that you really care about, and then do the research and the legwork to go and find the people that are passionate about the same things you are, join those communities, be active in those communities, share with those communities, and then it just becomes the kind of thing where it's like, when you were a kid and you drew something dope in your sketchbook, you would go find the other art kids and be like, yo, man, check out this thing I made. Like, oh, that's cool. It reminds me of this other thing I did. And then you're breaking out, you're looking at each other's sketchbooks. You're like, hey, can I do a sketch of your character? Because that character looks kind of cool. And then, like that same energy that you would have of sharing artwork that you're just excited about with your friends, just bringing that to people in the world, whether it's at a convention, which ain't nobody going to conventions anytime soon, but just bringing your work to other people that are passionate about the same things you are. And I see a few more people in the chat. I just want to give some love here. I see Mighty Geek Studios in there. How you doing, Mighty Geek? And you're already on the see. I noticed you're so smooth. I don't even notice that you're commenting on the chat to respond to people. See, you're seeing literally real time. This is how my brain operates. I get caught up. I'm talking. I'm rapping, and I'm sketching, and then I look back. I'm like, oh, gang of people are here. And Joseph's
screen, so I'm watching the chat too.
Well, it's good. Now you can hop in there and and comment as they go. I see Joseph's in the chat there. But yeah, the One Fantastic Week guys, they used to do a workshop. They called it the Fantastic Workshop, and I've only been to one of them, and then they skipped doing it this past year. But it was really great it was like art summer camp. It was like just being at a camp with a bunch of artists that are into comics, fantasy, sci-fi. Definitely it's more towards the sci-fi and fantasy. There were only a few people that were necessarily comic creators. And I think mostly a lot of that is because everyone who actually makes art is like, oh, wow, no, comics are a lot of work. So it's not about the not love for comics. It's just, yeah, not everybody got time to do all that. But I definitely feel like they gave me a lot of great feedback just in terms of how to approach finding that connection. Because I know that it can be frustrating for a lot of people, like you were talking about earlier, where you make something and you pour your heart into it and you throw it out into the universe and it's just like just crickets. So
I find a lot of new artists, they get real frustrated in regards to that. And also a lot of artists get frustrated with any type of commenting. Now, you can have constructive criticism, and then some people can be outright nasty. But thing is that's part of anything that you put out there, whether it's writing, art, whatever it is that you do creative. People are going to have something to say. You have to be able to look at it and take what they say. You can respond to it, but don't take it to where it's diminishing you. You can take it as use it as something to help build on what you're doing, and then try to see if you can find something objective in what they're saying. If not, then you just trash it and just move on. But it's not really something to dwell on because it doesn't affect you or nothing that you do. It's just words.
Yeah.
And then especially since we're living in this virtual world, it's really nothing. It's just things that's going out into the ethos, and you can take it or leave it. So that's why really likes and things like that really don't matter much for me. I think what more so matters is people sharing, engaging in your content. They share it. If someone goes to the point to share your work and then they comment on it, then that means they put in a little bit more extra effort to say that, oh, okay, I like this person's work, or I have this particular thing to say about this particular person's work, versus just randomly liking something or whatever the other things that people do when they're on social media besides liking.
Well, that's pretty much all it is, just the thumbs up or the heart, and then it goes on into the space. Whereas, like you said, when someone takes the time to share something you made, it's like they're saying this is a value, it's worthy of your attention. That's the thing, living in this attention economy. That's the biggest thing, is when somebody can take the time to co-sign and say, yes, take time out, look at this.
Yeah. You got Eric just joined, and then
how you doing, Eric?
Mighty Geek Studios, he had a comment on he got all his best criticism in the 90s with rejections from Marvel and DC.
It's funny. I never actually submitted work to the big two in all the time I've been drawing. I think that I just for a long time, I never really thought I was going to work in comics because, when you look at the industry, even though it's, obviously it's going through a major shift right now, but for the longest time, I used to look at it like, okay, if Marvel and DC put out if Marvel puts out 100 titles a month, DC puts out 100 titles a month, you take Image, Dark Horse, and then all the indies and put those together and say that's maybe like 300 titles a month. That means like in the whole entire direct market industry, that's like 500 jobs for pencilers, 500 jobs for inkers, 500 jobs for colorists, 500 jobs for writers. That does not include all of the colorists and letterers and inkers and writers that do multiple books per month. There's very few pencilers that are able to do multiple books a month. It's like Mark Bagley and like maybe 5 other guys. But But there's very few people who draw fast enough to draw more than one book a month. But the idea that as a job market, as a career, it was so small. It's like I think there may be more people in the NFL than there are working full time in comics.
Yeah, I think the only person I remember them talking about that would knock out books really fast is I don't know if it was Byrne, the guy that worked with Stan Lee. I don't know if I'm right.
Oh, Buscema, John Buscema.
Yeah, he would knock out like pages, like I don't know how many pages in a week, but he was pretty fast. So they said he had like a technique that he used in order to get stuff done, where he would minimize on some of the things that he would draw on it, and it helped him produce his work a lot faster. So I think that all boils down to style. If you have a specific style that's going to require you to take longer, then you're not going to be able to produce as fast. And then also, if you're doing it as a professional, you're going to be faster than most people that do it like casually, like, especially like myself, because
you build up the strength.
Yeah.
By the way, did you want me to throw your screen up? I'm not sure what you're working on right now.
Yeah, you can if you want. I mean, I'm just I might jump over to the cover that I was working on. I'm trying to figure out where to go with that. More comments too from Eric and Mighty Geek Studios.
Oh, let's see here. Yeah, so Eric said it's all possible, all in the physical networking. I'm not sure what that was in reference to because, I like I said, I ramble. And the Mighty Geek said all the time I was trying to see if I was good enough to get in, and the rejections came with tips on improving your work, which that's one of the things I think about now. Like you hear like the legendary critiques that someone like Neil Adams or Steve Rude, where they will go in and they will just rip you apart. But the knowledge they give you is real deep. You just got to be ready to. You just got to be ready to get both barrels. And I've often thought about like going up to one of the conventions and bringing my work and just saying, "Look, I'm not asking for your opinion because I want to get a job at Marvel and DC. I'm an indie creator. I'm likely always going to be an indie creator. I just want to be better at my craft. Let me put on my Kevlar vest and start shooting. Sit, let the bullets fly. Just give it that framework, because I definitely think that a lot of these guys have seen many people who are glorified fans who maybe want to work at Marvel, or they have the dream of working at Marvel, but they haven't put in anywhere near the serious work, and then they get shredded. And I think that for me, the standpoint of I'm a lover of comics and I'm making them for me, I just want to hear, I'm not saying go gentle on me, but I'm saying I'm not coming from that standpoint of, oh, I'm here because I want the great Neil Adams to give me his blessing. I'm like, I know my work is boo-boo. Show me the places where I can get better.
Yeah, I used to see that all the time when I used to go to conventions in the 90s and early 2000s, and I never really had the desire to go up to one of them and show them like a portfolio. I guess because I never saw myself working, like you said, for yourself, working in the industry, because I had too many things going on in my head, and I wanted to get that stuff done. And I mean, I probably should have pursued it more because I probably would have taken it a lot more serious. But I don't know. I just always felt like, and that's kind of like with the style thing that we talked about in a couple of your streams, is I felt like I never really chose or really pursued the style, because I felt like if I did that, then I'm going to be drawn like this other person. And when somebody see my stuff, they're going to like, oh yeah, that looks like such and such. And I know it's a compliment, and you can take it in that way, but it feels like, and I know it's nothing's going to be original, because everybody is going to be working off of some sort of prior knowledge, or have learned something through osmosis or whatever. But it's just that I feel like when I was learning that or going through the process that's like, oh well, Jim Lee is good, or Todd McFarlane is good, or this person is good. Like I can't remember the artist now, the one that does that I always talk about, that does the airbrush,
Alex Ross.
Frazetta.
Oh, Frazetta.
Yeah. So when I was looking at their work, it's like, yeah, I can model myself after their work. But then what's going to end up happening is people are going to look at it and say, oh yeah, that looks good. Who was your influence? But then I always looked at it too. It's a negative thing to it too. It's like you have so much knowledge of a lot of these artists, and if you ever was in like one of those panels and you have to talk to somebody and tell them, well, who inspires you? Where did your inspiration come from? You have a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And that's always a thing with me. It's like, if I ever get to that point where I'm in one of those panels, like I would have nothing to say because I'm like, well, I just I just did my art.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get my ideas out there. But I think in some sort of way there are some people that inspire me,
Mm-hmm.
but I just don't I just don't do like some people do. They get really almost to the point where their work looks just like that person's work. I never pursued that. I wish that was one thing I wish I'd have been not as hard headed about, because I think that for new artists that yeah, you can try to pretend like you want to create something new that no one has done before, but nothing's going to be new, and you might
Mm-hmm.
as well, especially with all of the technology and the things you have available to you, you might as well look for the easiest route to get there. And no route is going to be easy, but the fastest way to get there, and use all the resources around you. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and use all the resources around you, because that's going to help you get where you need to go a lot faster versus trying to trying to figure it out when you really don't have to.
Well, that actually leads me to another question, which is, if you didn't necessarily go through a phase where I'm going to model myself after Alex Toth, or I'm going to model myself specifically after Frazetta, or like a particular artist, in your mind, what form did the educational process of learning to draw or learning to improve your drawing, what form did that take? Was
I think just drawing, loving to draw, just keep drawing over and over again, drawing different things. Like at one period, I was drawing a lot of cartoons. One period, I was doing realism. Um, I think it all started with comic strips, and I used to do sculpture with plasticine clay when I was a kid. And so I think for me, it was all phases. Like I had a 3D phase. I would do digital art and like Illustrator. So for me, I don't think um, I think I kind of got lost with the question, but for me, my learning I think just came just because it was something I like doing, and I just wanted to keep doing it. So like a lot, it was a period that I would just say, okay, well, I'm not going to erase anymore. So I just started drawing with pen. So now when I draw traditionally, I just draw with pen because I don't like to erase. I know it sounds a little lazy, but I, I don't like to erase. It's like I want to get it done, and it's it's fun. And I want to get to the point where I can do that on a computer, where I can just ink my comics or ink my
Mhm.
animation, and then that will eliminate so many levels to the level of work that I will have to do, and then I can just sit there and um, focus on getting stuff done, because you don't have a lot of time, regardless of how much time people think, especially with the craziness that's going on now in this world.
Mhm.
You you gotta you got to go all out because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So,
Very true. Very true.
comments.
Oh yeah, I see Eric Rivera in the chat. He says it's a pretty good experience to obtain some of them do tear you apart. That's true, but it's the common stereotype. Most of them are real gentle people and want to see you evolve. And Alexi says, "Oh man, that seems like that would require humility." Well, studying art requires humility because you come in. It's what because everyone starts with that phase where, oh, I'm excited, I'm passionate, I want to make stuff, and then when you actually say I want to improve, once you start adding judgment and quality to the process, it becomes that's when the humility sets in. Because when you try to make something and it doesn't come out right, you're like, oh, okay, well, let me try it again, and it still doesn't come out right. And once you have a mental picture or a level of quality in it that you can't seem to achieve, that's it, because you have to kind of humble yourself and say, all right, I can't do what I want to do. Do I give up or do I keep going? And there's both the humility of learning that you just have to keep working at it, and also the humility of learning that some days you may never achieve the thing that you're trying to achieve. And maybe that means, okay, this piece is never going to work, or giving it the freedom or the space to be whatever it is and say, okay, this is something that has value, even if it's not the thing that I pictured. And that can be a tough pill to swallow. You can spend, I mean, that's something that you found, Amar, in terms of just the struggle between what's in your head and what you're able to actually get down on the paper or get down on the computer?
Yeah, I think for me, that sort of taps into the block thing that artists always or writers always talk about. For me, I kind of I don't know if I ever had a period where I would think that I had a block, but I would sort of look at when I have times when it's hard for me or I feel like it might be hard for me to think or draw something. Well, that's where reference comes into play, and then also just drawing. Just get on the computer or on the tablet and just draw. Don't worry about how it looks or what it is. Just draw. And that's sort of like what writers do too.
Mm-hmm.
Just write and don't worry about what you're writing or what it's going to end up being, because everything doesn't end up being a finished product. And same thing with art. You know, a lot of times when you're like moments where you're just doodling and just practicing, sometimes you come up with really good ideas that you end up loving. And you shouldn't limit it to just thinking about, oh, well, I need to know exactly what I'm doing at this moment, and I can't get past this issue that I'm having. So, you know, just sit down and just draw whatever it is. You might be trying to draw something specific, but then just draw something else. Draw what you really like doing, and that's what you should be doing anyway when you're drawing. If it's something that's difficult that you're drawing, then it's just something you have to educate yourself more about, which requires a little research and time. But then draw something else that may be related to it that you really like doing, and just keep pushing forward. And then you'll be able to jump right back at the particular thing you're trying to draw, because then you have overcame that obstacle in your head. It's like, oh well, because you got to remove all the can'ts. That's the biggest issue. Anytime you have any I don't know what's the proper term for it, but anytime you have anything with the NT in it at the end, just remove that and just
The NT? Oh,
yeah,
the can'ts?
yeah. Like,
I can't do this, I can't do that, that can't happen. Yeah.
shouldn't or will not be able to. Just remove all of that and just do it. You know, just because you get through it, especially if you love doing it. And if you don't get through it, then that means you really don't love doing it.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, for years, I avoided going to figure drawing classes because I was bad at it. And I was just like, no, you know what? When I draw out of my imagination, the things I like, I like what I draw out of my imagination more than what I draw when I'm actually looking at people in real life. And then I realized, well, I'm bad at it because I haven't worked at it. And who knows whether I will or won't be good at it, but if I don't work at it, I'm never going to improve. So that's when I went through a phase where I started just on a trial basis, taking figure drawing classes. And I saw that once I started working at it, the drawing from a live model and actual observational drawings in classes, that improved my imaginary drawings. But also on top of that, I developed a joy for drawing from life almost to the degree that I enjoy drawing from imagination. And in fact, in some ways it's easier. In some ways it's more enjoyable, because when you're drawing from your imagination, you're working more. Whereas when you're just drawing the human form or drawing a landscape or whatever, if you're just studying something, you can relax, and there's a certain meditation or meditative state that comes over you when you're just observing and drawing. And even if you're not copying one to one, the problem solving of making an observed drawing look interesting is very different from the meditative state of making something up.
Yeah, I agree, because that's what's happening now with me doing these animal eyes. Eric always was asking too, what's going on in the sequence?
Well, this is there was a scene a couple of pages before where a bunch of demons were sneaking in and attacking the Archangel Gabrielle from my comic Morningstar. That's her standing on the roof. This is her house. Basically, a demon tried to sneak into her window in the middle of the night and kill her. And he thought he caught her sleeping, and she caught him slipping. And so then I cut away from that scene to something else that was happening. Basically, in this whole issue is the war in heaven. And Lucifer has an army of demon angel hybrids. And so he's brought his rebel angels, he's brought angel demon hybrids, and he's got demons with him. And they're just slowly creeping in during dawn and attacking heaven. So this actual panel is after we cut away from the demon that snuck into Gabrielle's room in the middle of the night. We cut back, and now we see that when we left, we saw that her house had a bunch of demons crawling all over the exterior. So the last shot of that previous scene was them outside of her house, surrounded. You thought, oh, damn, she's outnumbered. And now you just see her on the roof just handling these fools, because that's the kind of badass she is. So that's what's going on here. So she's actually stabbing a knife through this one angel, and then there's like another, this angel demon hybrid. And then there's another demon that's going to be sneaking up behind her. And the one thing I do need to do is I need to figure out where to put her wings. Like I kind of want to have them flowing down and behind her like a cape, because I don't want it to block too much of the other character that she's actually stabbing, or the demon that's sneaking up behind her. So I have to work on the how to position her wings. But that is what's going on here. So she's on the roof of her own house and kicking ass. A lot going on. I actually, that's one of the things where I would really be worried about writing for other artists, because I am actually guilty of that thing where you put too much action in one panel. Like that thing where they say, and you draw, and the army comes over the mountain. It's like you can write that in one sentence, but that could be a big splash page. It could be like a 5-page sequence. There's a lot of stuff in there, and you got to say, all right, no, what do you actually want to see? And I often draw panels where they're loaded with tons of things going on at one time, almost like a Sergio Aragonés style thing. And it's something that I am trying to improve in terms of, I'm trying to simplify my own visual storytelling. In fact, I've been thinking really hard about, in my next comic book series, restricting it to like a Jack Kirby 6-panel grid for large chunks of the story.
Yeah, I switched over because the first book I did, it was like almost 10, it was like 10 panels, some of them or more. So what I've,
I'll put your screen back up.
Okay, Ramez Ali said thanks for this. He said your videos are really helping. So,
Oh, glad to hear it. Thank you.
so for me, I forgot what I wanted to say, but um, I was going to say something in regards to what you're doing and what I'm doing. What I remember first, um, like joining your channel and talking to you about your story, and what drew me in is because of your tale, and it's like another person. I know a lot of people tell the stories a lot of different ways, and I wanted to see your approach, and it's sort of like connected um, me to saying, okay, well, this is a story that I can tell. I have probably more of a what do we call this guy named oh man, can't remember the writer now, but he wrote Cthulhu,
Oh, H.P. Lovecraft.
but Lovecraft. So
Mhm.
a lot of my characters have like a Lovecraftian feel, and I kind of like the abstract because I know it's what Marvel calls them abstract. I kind of look at the angels and some of the other people's as abstract, um, and I like your take, but then also I was trying to tell a story a little different. So I'm like, for me, the way I look at it is eventually one day, once I can get to the point where, like how you have your books out and I have my books out, I see a lot of stuff that can happen there. You know, like maybe one day even a crossover, but I don't know. That's like way down the road. But um, I would like to share some more of my stuff once I get to that point. And for me, as far as the simplification point, that's why I wanted to get to this. Is I think for me, I more so look at the cartoon sort of style. Um, I don't know what artist does this, but it's sort of like when you look at it, you simplify it where it looks similar to what the cartoon animation looks like, but it still have enough detail in it where you know it's a comic book.
Hmm.
That's sort of the feel I want to get, so that way it allowed me to create the artwork a lot faster.
Have you ever looked at the work of Alex Toth?
No, I haven't, but I will jot that name down. And
He's a guy who a long time comic book creator, but he's known for doing stuff that's simple, but it's simple in the fact that he boils it down to its essence. It's not simple like there's not detail in it. He draws everything you need to get a very full, rich sense of the story, and not a single line more. He's efficient. That's probably the best way to put it. Is that he's efficient, but in a beautiful way. Like he's like, it's honestly like poetry. Like a good poem can take a very complex idea that you would need a novel to express, and they can express it in just like 10 or 20 lines where they boil it down to their essence. And those lines of poetry are like the line. I'm getting real artsy fartsy here, but those lines, those poetic lines, are like the lines of Alex Toth. Like he gets down to the essence of what every character is, every background object, every prop that's in the story. That's the beauty of Toth. And he also did a lot of work in animation. When you mentioned animation, that's the thing that made me think of him, because he did a lot of work for Hanna-Barbera. He designed Space Ghost, um, and I think he did like the Herculoids and a few other Hanna-Barbera characters. I actually have a book that's like the art of Hanna-Barbera animation somewhere around my house, and there's a lot of Alex Toth work in there. So Toth, like he and Kirby both did a lot of work in animation, like kind of later in their career when they were like, yeah, this comic stuff is busting my ass. Like I'm not getting paid right for my stuff. So let me go to animation where they're paying artists a little bit better. And real quick, I also saw Eric gave the suggestion of for Gabrielle asking whether she's standing on a rooftop or flying, because I could draw with her wings retracted, which is kind of what I'm gonna do. I've been, for a lot of these characters, I don't know why it took me like 5 or 6 issues to figure this out, but I've been using kind of the gargoyles method, where I'll draw them with their wings folded over them and draping off them like capes. And I'm like, it's such an elegant solution. So I've been doing that a lot, and I think that's probably what I'm going to end up doing with the pose that she has there. I was going to ask you when we were talking before about the process in terms of like learning and just working at art and drawing. Did you have a formal art education?
Well, I started out. My mom told me I've been drawing since I was 4. I don't remember any of that. All I remember is I was playing with clay long enough to where it would, like, I don't know what's happening if I had like some skin disease, but all of my tips of my fingers is like the skin was peeled back, because I would always work with these little clay tools and practicing clay, and I would always make like these little clay figures. That's all I remember, and that's why for me, when I started a YouTube channel, like I still don't understand why I haven't done anything with that yet, but maybe something like that will happen. But I used to do that all the time when I was little, and for me, as far as the learning process, it started there. I think I was looking at it was like a lot of the old Marvel, the Blue Hawk. I was trying to bring up the version that I did recently, the one I want to animate, the Blue Hawk, like the old Dracula comics from like the 70s and 60s or wherever they came out. All that stuff sort of inspired me and scared me a little bit. Actually, the comics were scarier than the movies. And I didn't have initially any formal training. I still don't really consider it formal training because I went to school for advertising. And it's supposed to be an illustration, but initially I wanted to do animation, and I had a bad instructor. So one thing I would never always say is never listen to anything your instructor says if it's negative, because that was one thing that sort of like steered my career in another direction. I sort of like made a 360 later on in life, but it's just that was something I really want to do. If it's something you really want to do and you really like, nobody should really tell you what the market is or how that is no career for that or whatever. And that's sort of like what they did. But as far as the training, the only thing I got out of school was different tools, learn how to use different tools. And then just the experience of seeing live new models, because that was something I never saw before. And when I saw that, it was different. I had to get used to it. But then, once I got used to it, it was fun. But the art teachers was never really given me enough, because when I was there, it's so like, if you can draw, they would just come by and say, oh, that looks nice or whatever, and keep going, or you may need to work on this or whatever. But it was never really nothing that was instructional, where it's like, well, you need to improve this or you need to work on this so that way you can have better skills at that. It was mostly if you didn't have art skills, it seemed like they would help them more, or it's just, for me, I didn't really get much out of school from that. So I really feel like most of my education came from trial and error. Some of it came from books, reading books, but most of it came from trial and error. So that's why there's a lot of things that I could have learned years ago that I didn't. But I think also what you can fall into is a trap if you feel like I don't really call it talent, but if you feel like you put in the work where you understand how to draw, then you kind of can take for granted ability, and I think that's something that I kind of did. It's like, oh, I feel like, yeah, I can do that. I'm not really worried too much about that. I do that when I need to do it. And in order for you to grow, you got to really work on those things that you weak at, like you even say in your videos when we watch those. So it's like For me, I tend to just look at it as, well, if I can see it, I can draw it.
Mhm. Well, first off, you just say that that's a skill that I don't have. Just the fact that you're like, if I can see it, I can draw it. I'm like, no. I see stuff all the time. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make that. Oh wait, no, that doesn't look good. Oh, I'm gonna. Oh wait, no, that does. Oh wait, let me go get some reference. It still doesn't look right. Like for me, it's a process. Literally every drawing I've ever made that comes out even half good is a earned. It's an earned victory. It's like I win. I draw these comics by inches. Oh, I see it. We got somebody new in the chat. We see Creeker Game. How you doing, Creeker? Thanks for stopping in. And Eric had some comments also mentioning about let's see, he said don't be afraid to re-render your figures to appropriate them for the action, or just reserve a panel for the action entirely. Overlapping is natural. And that's a good point. There's even a place earlier in here where I had a transition. There's a big empty spot down here. I drew at this panel just to make sure I didn't forget it, because I was like, what's supposed to go in that circle? And the reason for that is because I have a point where another character, Remiel, enters into this scene to at the end of the page to challenge Gabrielle. And she's so far away in both the panel where you see her flying in, and then the panel when she lands is like a full figure shot, but it's because of the size of the panel, it's kind of small. So I said, I'm going to need a close-up so people can say, oh, that's who this character is, just so it's not left vague. So I definitely see that in terms of like overlapping and reserving panels just to call out details, that cutting back and forth between the wide shots and the medium shots and the close-up shots. And Eric also said in terms of working with clay or any sculpting material that's similar to drawing, because you're applying the same knowledge but on physical objects. He said that was a cool background. I've always wanted to take up sculpting, and in fact, I started taking a class in clay sculpting at a school in California, in Walnut, California, and it was one of those things where I had always wanted to learn it, and I was in between jobs, so I said, "Oh, I've got time to take this," and I started the class, and 2 weeks in, I got a new job, and I'm like, I don't have time for this class, and I had to drop out after the third week. But and to this day, I still have great admiration for sculpting in terms of how it does inform your sense. The working in 3D informs your skill at working in 2D. I just have not put forth the time to actually engage in that study, because I'm like, I still got so much to do in terms of making the comics. You know how it is. You got a lot on your plate, and it's like there's only so many hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, I think for me, I look at it when people say talent. I look at it as some people just have the natural aptitude to pick up things faster than others, but that also can be a weakness if you don't really practice it and use that. So it's like you can have somebody that's naturally really good at singing, but they don't really practice on breathing. They don't practice on the fundamentals that someone that have the desire to want to sing, and they can actually sing on note. That person can progress a lot faster than the person that has a natural aptitude for it, because they are willing to put in the work. So you still got to put in the work, even if you have the aptitude for it. Because I know people always look at stuff you do and they say, "Oh, you're so talented." And I'm like, well, talent is really not a thing. It's something. I don't really look at it like that. I look at it as something I still have to practice that. It's not something I just started doing. Even someone that you think may have the ability to do it, they still have to practice at it. Just like even if you've been doing it all your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like for instance, I was an athlete in college, and I remember that I had what was considered a lot of natural talent, but I saw guys. There's a guy on our team who was a walk-on, and he ended up being a Division I NCAA. I can't remember if he won his event or whether he was a finalist, but he was a guy who was a walk-on, and he wasn't the fastest guy in his school, but he had the heart. And that's the thing that I think will carry you a lot more. Like you said, if you have natural talent, a lot of people just coast on natural talent. They don't do any more work because they're just like, I'm good enough. And the people who come in and just grind and they're working at it day in, day out, a lot of times they'll surpass people who have natural talent. And then when you have the people with the natural talent who also grind, that's where you get the people who are magical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's like sometimes you have to realize that because for me, I just feel like if I was devoted just to doing comics and just to doing art full time, and I really found my place in it, I would be way farther now than I am because and I tend to that's one thing that's problem for me. I got to stop doing comparing from myself to my old self versus my new self. But the thing is I think that you just gotta take what you have at the point you are at now, and then just focus on the things that you want to get good at, and just do it. And I did less of that when I was younger, and I just feel like now is a time for me to do more of this. So one of the things I wanted to mention is that I know it's a weakness for most that I plan on working on this year is backgrounds, because that's something that for me a lot of comic artists really neglect is backgrounds. Some don't, but you have to really have a willingness to put the work in for that. So then also drawing things that I don't normally draw, like what I'm doing now is I'm trying to draw animal eyes. So that's something I never drew before. Now I know how to draw eyes, but um, animal eyes can get pretty otherworldly if I want to use that. And
they're inhuman, which is both the beauty of them and the strangeness of them.
Yeah, and they have a lot of details that you don't see in human eyes, and I think that also can help with your characters too, be able to see those things. And in addition to that, that's the reason why with the characters that I'm doing in this book, I'm using sea characters or sea creatures, is because there's so many sea creatures that you'll never see. You may see them on Pinterest or somewhere on the internet, but there's so many beautiful creatures underwater that you'll never see. And for me, it's like that's like a whole different world, and I feel like that's something I want to share as well because I think it's kind of neat. Um, I don't know if that's a good word to use, but so I think for me, the latter part of this year is going to be more so devoted to not just trying to get the comic books and the animation stuff that I want to work on done, but then also working on the backgrounds. So I feel like if I get decent at backgrounds, then I'll be able to tell the full story because people can do characters all day, and I'll see people they'll run from hands, run from feet. They'll do really good characters, but no one do a background. They'll just put something in there, just throw it in there. Especially if it has like an anime look, they just put a little something in there and then move on with it, and that's cool. But for me, it just feels like in order for you to tell the full story, you should be able to do a decent background.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just me. That's not for everybody, but
do you look at any plein air painters or painters that do backgrounds and environments?
I'm starting to. There's one person I just follow on Twitch that does it. I can't remember her name right now because I just followed it yesterday. But I'm gonna start doing more research on that. I'm probably gonna start doing a little bit more. I don't know if it's photo bashing. Probably start practicing that more. Not so much to use it for my backgrounds, but then just to understand how to composite them together to get what I want. So I'm gonna probably use that as a technique to speed the process along, and then figure out how they do it because that's all they do for concept. And for most of the art you see in Hollywood is just a lot of photo bashing. So combine the three with photos and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. There's a guy named Sparth who's a concept artist. He did a lot of concept art for Halo, and he also does a lot of book covers. And I have one of his books. He has a series called Structura, and he does these beautiful science fiction fantasy landscapes, and they're amazing because they're like primitive shapes and structural. And it's one of those things where you look at it and the digital brushstrokes he's using are not a mystery. It's almost like he's making it out of large blocky shapes. A lot of them looks like he could almost be drawing them all in vector, but it's his composition and his balance of detail versus simple space and his control of color. He's like one of those guys who you look at it and he makes, like, you look at it and it's not like you look at it and go, oh, I could do that. You look at that and go, how did he do that with such simple brush strokes? Because when he looks at it, you look at it, you're immediately impressed and like, it's amazing, but you can see the fundamental primal. It's not like he's painting photorealistic environments. He's painting these things that look very graphic, almost like Russian constructivist artwork. But, you know, in terms of like large, chunky, blocky brushstrokes, but it's beautiful and elegant, and amazingly composed, and it, like you said, it's an environment. That's actually that was the main reason why I thought of him, is because his environments tell a story. Like a lot of times, the human figure is just a tiny little figure in the picture plane, just for the sense of scale. But the environment itself is this massive, beautiful thing that creates a sense of narrative.
Yeah, from Craig Game, Mikey. I think his name is Alexi and Eric.
Oh yeah, let's see here. A couple more comments there. Yeah, Mighty Geek says that most action shots, such as landing, should be planned like a fight scene. Yeah, I definitely think that action shots you have to orchestrate it out in order to make sure the storytelling doesn't get confusing, but that the poses still stand out, so it makes both a beautiful picture, but doesn't sacrifice that beauty for narrative. I mean, if I have to choose, and that's a personal choice, I'll take narrative over beauty. I'll make an ugly picture, but it tells the story as opposed to just trying to make a beauty shot. And Alexi says, I think general culture plays into that too, in terms of the idea of talent versus art, because people seem to praise talent over and above work in the arts, which is weird because, you know, the whole American work ethic is, you know, you work hard, you'll get rewards. You think that we would praise the people that don't have natural talent way more. And even Michelangelo, one of his famous quotes is that if people saw how hard he worked to get the results he had, they wouldn't be nearly as impressed by it. Because, you know, Michelangelo's one of those guys who he destroyed so many of his sketches before he died, or I think he had his assistant do so, and, you know, did so much work and study that, yeah, Michelangelo, as brilliant as his work is, I think he'd be the first person to say, this isn't God-given talent. I busted my ass for it. And in fact, for any of y'all out there listening, I've mentioned it in the past, for people in the chat, if you guys have not checked out the book The Agony and the Ecstasy by Irving Stone, it is a must read for anyone who is an artist. And this was recommended to me by my figure drawing instructor Carl Ganas, and it is a fictional novel, but it's a fictional biography of Michelangelo. So it tells his whole life story, but it doesn't tell it like a history book. It tells it like someone's reading you a novel. So all of the historical details and all the historical facts are very thoroughly researched, but it's very much a story, and it's beautiful, and it walks you through his life. And also a lot of the conflicts that artists have now in terms of following your creative passions versus having to do work to make money and to make a living, and the compromises we make in order to profit off of our art, or the sacrifices we make so we can make our art even if we're not properly getting compensated for it. All the issues that we deal with today as an artist, like Michelangelo was dealing with in the 1500s. So it's like it's amazing how the more things change, the more they stay the same. Let's see, a last couple of comments in here because we're already at about an hour.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
You know what? I gotta tell you, the couple of times I since I started having people on here, I look down, we start talking, I look up, I feel like I've barely drawn anything, barely got anything done, and we just got caught up in yapping. So the time definitely flies even more when we're actively talking.
Yeah, I got 2 eyes done. That's about it.
Let's see. Last couple of comments in here. Mighty Geek also says, if you take time to practice new things, you will get better at it. That's definitely true. It says backgrounds are tricky because you have the structural kind and the organic kind. Mighty Geek says cityscapes are a combination of the organic and structural organic and structural elements, which that's true. You know, you've got like your cities and parks, and then buildings coming out of there, trees in the environment. Ion Rocks is in the chat too. Says talent is amazing, bro. You know what? Talent. I always look at it like, for me, even more. I'll tell you what to me is more powerful than talent is passion, because if you're that interested and you're that passionate about a certain skill and you're going to work on it, if you're working on it because you love that thing, then that will keep you going. Whereas there's lots of people, like I've met people who are talented musicians. They were just like, yeah, but it got hard and I just got tired of being on the road. I don't want to do it anymore. And there's people who are great writers and they just like, I think I'm going to go study law, or I'm going to study something more practical. And that's, you know what, I make it sound like I'm throwing shade. There's definitely no shame in making a decent living, no matter what you do. You know, pay your bills, get paid, make money. But the fact that people definitely, they may have had the talent, but they didn't have the passion for it. So they just kind of let it go to the wayside. Whereas there's people who are super passionate about something and they will work themselves to death to make the thing. And they're not even making it for the success. They're making it because they're like, I love this thing. Like I was having a conversation with my wife the other day about the fact that, yeah, comics is not the most profitable art form just because of how labor intensive it is. And I'm actually thinking once I finish Morningstar, I'm going to continue to make comics, but I'm definitely going to see if I can shift gears into doing more standalone art and art prints, and see if I can find a balance between making more profitable artwork. Because I mean, think about it. The time it takes you to make a single issue, you can probably do, 10 or more paintings. You can do like a painting a week that you could sell each of those paintings for 4 to 5 times the amount you would sell your individual comic for. And that comic is going to take you, and that's if you could do a comic in a month. I mean, I don't know. I was going to say, how long do you think it takes you to do, how long do you think it will take you to do an issue?
Well, the first one took, I think it was probably get the real time, because a lot of it was part-time. It probably is about, if I was to combine all the time, maybe 2-3 months, if that long. But it spanned it out from, because the writing was done by someone else, and I was also helping them as well. So I went from like March to about June, and then from June to like maybe September, October is when I finished the book. The hardest part was some of the stuff had to be either redone or reworked, and I think the hardest part was the inking and the color. So for me, it feels like if I can skip that whole drawing phase, well, actually, not the inking and color, it was the figuring out the stuff to draw for the universe. Because all this is new. It still is new. So in that being new, I had to figure out what this is going to look like.
The world building.
So it was a lot of discovery. Mikey Studio says his first comic made took about 3 weeks.
Damn, that's hot fire. I don't think I've ever gotten close to doing a book in a month. I think the fastest I've ever done was a book in about 3.5 months. I mean, part of that is the fact that I'm doing. Oh, and he says it was 16 pages. I tend to do 24-page issues just because that breaks down nicer for me than 22 issues. Plus, I sell my issues for $5, so I want them to at least have a little bit more than like a 20-page. I want to feel like people are getting their money's worth and a few extra pages and get more of a read per issue. But yeah, I'd like to think that as I keep going, I'm going to get faster. But what happens is I draw, I study the craft of drawing, and as I learn, not necessarily that I improve, but what it is I see places where I can improve, and I slow down to get better at those things. So it's like, first my perception improves, so I can see flaws where I didn't see them before. Then I slow down to fix those flaws, and the quality raises. And then I get to a plateau where I'm like, okay, now that I've fixed those, I start to speed up a little bit. And then as I speed up a little bit, my perception begins to adapt more, and I see more flaws. And that's why I keep going through these like herky jerky. I'll speed up a little bit, and then I'll slow down. I'll speed up a little bit, and then I'll slow down. So,
yeah, I wanted to share something real quick. There is a manager, and this is helpful for me. I know you don't use Clip Studio, but if anyone else uses Clip Studio, a lot of times you work on stuff. Hopefully, there's nothing up here that is something's going to cause people to have an issue with. But there's a manager for Clip Studio, sort of like how Photoshop has one called Clip Studio. And I was trying to find this artwork that I wanted to show you. This is more or less the style I wanted to go with for the upcoming comic. This was the Hulk that I did for Super.
Yeah.
So actually the drawing has more detail. Let me go here. Where is he? Is it? Nope, that's not it. Trying to find the drawing. 1 second. All right. Okay, I don't know why it's not showing up.
Hidden layers.
Yeah, oh, there it is. So this I won't do I'm trying to minimize the detail. So that's why I was talking about the animation stuff. I wanted to get it to a point where it's more like where is it? More like this. And if I can get the rest of the background in there with the style being sort of with some detail, but maybe with less throughout the book, that would be my end goal. And I think for me, my estimation because the next book for now, I think it's 60, maybe 60 or more pages. I'm thinking, based on my estimation, should be maybe 2 months. I'm hoping it's 2 months. If I can get it done in 2 months, the goal would be eventually 1 month. But if I can get it done in 2 months, then I can project that I can get at least 6 books or more done in a year. That's going to be projection.
That's impressive. I mean, 60 pages, a 60-page issue in 2 months. I mean, that's as fast as a monthly book. So we're even going faster than that. If you feel like later on you can get it getting it down to a month. That's crazy fast.
That's because I want to simplify it. For me, this is way more simple because it doesn't have all the hatching in it, and it still conveys the point. This is where I want to go. And yeah, my geek, I'm gonna have the shadow still there in animation. Right now I'm doing it in Blender, but I do plan on leaving some of the shadows in there because I'm hoping if I can do it, even if it's like for a few seconds, the animation of this just gives me a whole nother vibe or feeling that I can do professional animation without being a professional animator. Because if I can make all the artwork poses look like this with a really good background, people will really like that.
Are you thinking of something kind of a cell shaded animation look?
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. This is more of a cell shaded look.
Because honestly look at that, even though it's the Hulk, I think you could probably simplify it even more.
Yeah, I do have a couple other versions that's even more simplified, but it doesn't convey the point. I did take that note, Mighty Geek, for the Bruce Tim. I'll check
Oh
him out.
yeah, I see that. He said to check out Bruce Timm. I mean, yeah, Bruce Timm is definitely a master of a simplification.
So you said you can simplify even more.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of cell shaded animation, I'm trying to think of a video game that I've seen that looked like that. But there's definitely stuff I've seen where you had characters that were large and massive, but it's almost as if you were looking at they're rendered almost as if you were looking at CG primitives with just enough detail to make it feel sculpted.
So these
So
are the simple versions, but I don't think this is what you was talking about.
no, I'm trying to think of a really good example. Most of the stuff that I'm thinking of, like honestly, there's a lot of sculptures that if you ever look at Rodin's work, he has a bunch of rough sculptures that have all of the detail. I mean, no, they have all of the motion and gesture
What was that?
of huh?
What was that again? You mentioned.
Rodin, Augustus Rodin, a French sculptor.
Okay.
He's the guy who did the Thinker, that old famous sculpture where the guy's sitting, the Thinker, and he has a bunch of sculptures. I went to the Rodin Museum in France a few years back, and he has a lot of what you can only call sketches, but they're clay sculptures. And what they are is they have all of they're like rough studies for more formal pieces, but some of them were just sketches for the sake of sketching, and they have all the gesture and motion of his finished pieces, but they're very primitive. They're just unfinished sculptures. And I almost feel like, even though they had rough texture to them, I think if you were to have the smoothed out version of the way that you sketch those characters, I could almost. The point being is that you could, if you were to smooth them out even more, like I think that you could pull out even less detail and say, what if I were going to draw this with very primitive polys, but you're doing it in pencil or ink, like you're actually sketching that out, and then you said, all right, as polys, this looks like dull and unfinished, and then you add just enough detail to make it feel like a muscle, like you put detail around where the muscles are overlapping and interconnecting.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like stripping it down to like what I was saying really earlier on about Alex Toth, like a sculptural version of putting in like just barely what you need to describe the thing. Because I see what you're doing there, and I think that can work. But if your goal is speed, I think you could go even simpler. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the overall goal. Because what I want to do is I want to translate the comics into animation.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be able to marry the style. So whatever you do in the comics can be done for animation, because I think in this day and age, as an independent creator, you can do 3 things. I know it sounds impossible, but 3 things that help your comics overall, if you can do it, or if you have the network of people that you can do it with, and that's games, animation, and comics. All that can be one package. It's a lot of work, but if it's possible to do, all of that is really one thing. In the game, you get animation. In the game, you get a comic book. Because generally, what it comes with, in some cases, is a comic book, and then you also tell a story in the game as well. So if there's some kind of way for you to be able to produce a product like that, I think for overall experience, it can really sell not only your comic, but then also your game and the whole world you're trying to sell to people, because you can offer so much in that. It's just so much work. But the thing is, if it's some way you can network with the people to be able to get this type of thing done. And even if it's something that you can do like within 6 months to a year, that can bring so much more exposure to what you do and the world you're trying to create.
No, I completely agree. I mean, for me, the only reason why I haven't jumped onto that is because I'm so much of a control freak, and like I actually genuinely, it's not just a matter of wanting the control, but I genuinely do enjoy doing the whole thing myself. But I think the idea that you're talking about in terms of transmedia is the phrase that I've heard a lot of people say, where you create something and it's not just one thing. It is the animated series, it is the comic book, it is the video game, and it's whatever, it's the TV show, it's all the things at once.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I also see a couple more comments in here. Mighty Geek says, I've done cell animation, and the lines that define the muscle mass are mass are usually turned into basic shapes. And Eric asks, have you guys ever thought of roughing an entire book loosely, tighten the pencils, then inking it later? Which not only have I thought of it, that's how I did my first graphic novel. The book
my first book as well.
Exactly. I did a 140-page graphic novel called Eye of the Gods. It was a psychological thriller, and I thumbnailed the entire book. Then I lettered my thumbnails so I could read it and see how it read. Then I edited the lettered thumbnail. So I removed pages, added pages, changed dialogue, and reworked it. Because now that I could see the whole thing as one, I had, it made it easier for me to analyze what was wrong and what was missing. And then I went back and penciled it and then inked it. So
yeah, but you went way into it on that.
And then I see Noble Art says, me and this guy think similar, been thinking the same way. I'm happy to hear it. It's always good to have birds of the feather here that are looking at the creative process through similar views. But so we're like at about an hour 20 here. So I think that we're probably ready to wrap it up. Did you want me to throw that throw the URL that I put up in the beginning, or was there a different URL you wanted to point people out, Amar?
No, that's fine. Whatever you want to do. I'm just glad to hang out. You know?
Yeah, me too.
So
yeah, so I got Amar's his YouTube channel is in the chat, and if you go to the first post there, it's the one I've got on the screen now. So it's youtube.com/touch and design art. So Amar does a lot of the same work that we're doing here, where except we're working on our comics, but he's showing a lot of his work in Blender, doing 3D models. So if you want to learn more about 3D and using that to both for animation storytelling and for enhancing your illustrations, Amar's a great resource for that. And in general, like every time we're talking, if there's some sort of technical thing with the software, or if there's a hack that you can use for productivity, Amar has got all those. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to have him on. It's just because a lot of times I'll get so caught up in his comments. I'm like, whoa, wait, this is a lot of information. It's a lot to download. So it's nice to have him. It's nice to have you here. I'm talking about you like you ain't even here now. It's nice to have you here in person, virtually, to talk and share all that. So guys, definitely go and check Amar's channel out. Real quick, let me go back here and throw up my screen just to close this out. But again, I wanted to thank you for coming on and making the time. I'm going to start having more people on in the future, but I definitely don't want this to be the last time that I have you on. I definitely want to have you back in the future just to keep up with progress on your work, sharing whatever new things you learn about your approach and creativity as you continue your creative journey.
Yeah, it sounds great, man. I'm glad to hang out and be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, that's what I love this. Like, it feels like we're entering, if there's one thing that this quarantine has brought a positive, is that I think it has more people connecting virtually in ways that they hadn't before. Like, this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. It's having people on my channel. And it's silly because now that I'm using StreamYard, it actually is easier than the interface for for YouTube's own regular live stream from there. It's easy to do it on this thing. So it's now I'm like, what was I afraid of? What was I waiting for? But everybody who's in the chat, again, thank you so much for showing up live. For everyone watching on the repeats, if you want to support this channel, and again, I share all my comic book work and works in progress before anyone else in the world sees them. You can see all of that and get a bonus live stream or a bonus YouTube video. That's Patreon exclusive once a month. It's at patreon.com/GERIMI. If you want to follow me and if you want to get all of the work that I share on social media in one place delivered to your inbox once a month, I send out an email newsletter. That's at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my books, or if you read digitally on Amazon Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That will forward you to my Amazon author page. So guys, that's it for now. Go be creative.
Bye, everyone.